I got a DM, a surprise DM actually, from somebody that I didn't know, requesting to speak to me. And that surprise DM came after. No, so let me tell y'all. What's good, family? Look, welcome to season 4 of Perspective. I'm your host, Tyrell. Now listen, if you're new here, Perspective is a space where you and I take life transforming principles, apply them to our daily lives to transform our world around us. That's the mission and the vision of this space. And if you're new here, or if it's your first time, or you've been here for all the seasons, I want to welcome you back. We're kicking off season 4 in a very intimate way. The main theme of season 4, we coming after the men. That's right. We talking about leadership. We talking about marriage. We talking about relationships. We talking about entrepreneurship. We talking about business, talking about development, all things manhood. I think right now, community wise, household wise, citywide, nationwide, we have a lack of effective leaders. And I feel like if we can redeem the men, right, then everything else will come after that. A lot of the issues that we experience societally, I feel, are a direct correlation to the underdevelopment of men, to the lack of leadership in men, and lack of identity and sense of purpose overall in men. And so we're kicking off this season kind of focusing, pinpointing on helping our men, right? Developing men. If you're a guy, if you're a man out there who want to plug in and lock into a place and space that can help you develop, become the best person, the best version of yourself, I say this place is that place for you, or at least one of them. If you want to grab tools from your tool belt, you're more than welcome to. And that's the hope. That's my hope, that you would do that. It's your first time, or you've been here for all the seasons. I want to welcome you back. So the craziest thing happened to me a few weeks ago. I got a DM after watching this video on YouTube, was suggested on my YouTube channel. I never saw this podcast before, never heard of it either. It was just suggested. And it was this neuroscientist talking about the brain. And I'm really fascinated about the human behavior, human interactions, why people do what they do. Super fascinated about this type of stuff. Anyway, it was suggested on my timeline. I click on it, watched the video, was so interested in it. I sent it to my wife minutes into it for her to watch it on her way from the hospital, being there with my daughter. So anyway, sent it to her, kept watching it, and then I kind of paused it to continue to do whatever I was doing. And then that was a Monday. On Friday, I went back and commented on the video and continued to watch more of it. By the following Monday, I got a DM. Now this DM said, "Hey, congratulations. You've been entered to a raffle contest." And I said, okay, great, because you're a subscriber to this channel. And by the way, you have been picked as one of the winners. And I was like, oh, is this real? Actually, I had to go back to the original video just to hear, like, okay, what was this raffle about? So anyway, I go back to the original video, and in the beginning he says, hey, we reached 6 million subscribers. And so for the first time ever, we're going to do a raffle contest. If you're subscribed, you're entered to win. First person is going to get $1,000 Amazon stipend, or Amazon cash, really, to use on Amazon. Second person is going to get flown out to where this podcast is actually, recorded live, and they're going to be able to be in a live recording. And then a third person is going to get a 10-minute phone conversation with this individual, with the founder of this company and podcast. And so I heard that, and I'm like, oh wow, like I think it's a pretty big deal. I'm pretty sure it's a huge deal. Like 6 million subscribers, bro. This is wild. So I started to do my homework on like who this individual is, and the way they hosted, the way they facilitated conversations, the way they asked questions. I was finding similarities in the way they thought and processed, even with myself. And so I was like, very interesting. Like, this guy is really interesting. I had a thought, like, it'd be crazy to have him on Perspective. It'd be dope. And so anyway, the young lady asked for my email and gave her my email. And then about a week later, she said, hey, we released the winners. Go check out the page, the post. And so I went to the YouTube post, and it said that I had won out of all three things, the 10-minute phone conversation with this individual. Now, at this point, I've done a little bit of homework, watched a few podcasts of him, and become very familiar, followed him on IG. And I was like, wow, this is a huge deal. And just to understand kind of his framework of, how he thinks, how he's wired, I went ahead and bought his book called The Diary of a CEO, The 33 Laws of Business and Life. Haven't read it yet. I'm going to dive into it. I'm going to read it. And as we speak right now, that phone call is being scheduled. So the reason why this is crazy is because the chances of me being selected out of 6 million people, and I had just for the first time saw this podcast on that Monday, and then got that notification later that I won a 10-minute conversation. So, which is wild. So I'm gonna dive into this book, see what it's about, and what's interesting about the Diary of a CEO podcast, I'm noticing that a lot of diverse individuals, a lot of high thought leaders, industry leaders, CEOs, clearly, and a lot of them are talking about things that are really rich with principles and different life perspectives that can help you. If you apply them, you can really help transform your world. And that's exactly what perspective is about. Ironically enough, it's about taking life-changing principles, applying to your daily life to transform the world around you. And so this is wild. So this is part 1. There will be a part 2. And let's see what happens. I'm going to have a conversation on the phone with Stephen Bartlett. Diary of a CEO, 33 Laws of Business and Life. Let's see what it's talking about. A lot has happened in 2 years. A lot has happened. I know I've been away for a little while, and that's really to focus on family. Me and my wife, we've had 2 children since the last season of Perspective, our baby boy and recently our baby girl. And with our baby girl, the last 6.5, 7 months, our lives have really changed and have been impacted forever. Back in December 2023, I was at work. It was a normal Tuesday afternoon, and I get a text from my wife saying, hey, these contractions are getting really intense. I'm going to call the OBGYN. So I call her, see how she's feeling. And she's like, hey, cramps since yesterday haven't stopped. And I'm going to call the OBGYN. And she called and went ahead and got her in. I left work right away, and immediately they went in to check Nicole. At this point, she was due April 9th with our baby girl. We just had our gender reveal the month before in November. And so this is December 12th, exactly 1 month after that gender reveal. And now we find ourselves in the office with the OBGYN. So they have her up on the table and they check her, and the doctors, noticed that she was already dilated. And then 2, what was different or odd was she noticed her temperature was getting, her body was getting warmer. So she asked them to check her temp. They check her temperature, and she had an elevated temp. So after the elevated temp and partial dilation, they said, let's go ahead and get you admitted, to prepare for the most drastic case scenario in the event, right, that it escalates from here. Fast forward, we get admitted, and Nicole was just, the contractions are getting more intense. She's getting even more dilated. And now the doctors are collaborating and saying, hey, look, listen, this baby's probably going to come sooner than later. And so they start having real conversations with us. They tell us that, that day marked 23 weeks and 0 days of gestational development for the infant. So what that means is things like eyelids, things like lungs, certain things are still developing in a child. My wife was only 5 months and 3 weeks pregnant with our baby girl, and she had about 4.5 months to go, just about 4 months to go. So at this point, they tell us the hard things, right? Hey, your baby has a 50% chance of surviving this delivery, regardless of whether you do C-section or you do vaginal birth. You have a 50% chance, because 23 weeks, 0 days is not a lot of time. And so they asked us if we had 2 options. Do you want to do life care or resuscitative care? Now, life care is simply they bring the baby into the world, have a moment. You get to have a moment with the baby as parents, and then you allow the baby to either transition and pass on, or if they're able to kind of weather the storm and breathe and sustain themselves, and they'll go over to NICU. And then resuscitative care is after the baby passes through the womb or just taken out the womb, they're doing all they can to resuscitate this baby and make sure the baby's living, make sure the baby can be stable. And once they stabilize the baby, they can gotta get the baby intubated and off to NICU. So we chose resuscitative life care. This is one of the hardest conversations I think we've ever had to have, because, as a parent, you're thinking, do I want to put this little human, sign up this little human for potential, uphill battles, potential operations, surgeries, medical needs. I mean, all these different things, all these thoughts come running through your head a million miles an hour. And the very vulnerable thoughts, the real thoughts, the ugly thoughts of like, hey, God, why is this happening? Or, hey, why us? Or, hey, we don't want her to have to suffer. We don't want her to be a child that has to live with potential frailties and disabilities. All these different thoughts and fears are come flooding in. And in a moment of stillness, at the pause, we prayed and said, God, look, your will be done. What do you want us to do? And we remembered, my wife had a number of dreams in the past. Whenever she would have a dream about a baby girl being born, for some reason, every single time we'd be in a hospital space, there'd be a lot of nurses and people around, and we just knew people were praying for us. In her dreams, that's exactly what she would experience all the time. And so when all this is developing, she's remembering, oh my gosh, this is just like the dreams I've had in the past. And so there was a sense of kind of peace and comfort there in the middle of crisis at this point. So we choose C-section due to just the events of, if you tried to pass the baby, the cervix not being fully dilated, all the different things. So we chose C-section.